All right, so we've got a good friend of ours, Ryan Hack, that will be
Talk
pulling
about
up here.
adultitis
He
fighter,
is an
right?
adultitis fighter. Ryan believes that being different is awesome. He's got a book here.
It's like one of our
This has
kids'
been out for
favorite
quite a
books.
while
Yeah.
now, but it is one of our favorites in our family. Ryan is a speaker and author, and he has shared his message with children and adults of all ages at schools, hospitals, corporations, things like that. Through storytelling and humor, Ryan shares his journey of growing up with one hand and overcoming challenges he encounters on a daily basis, living in a world designed for people with two hands. He also talks about the surprising simplicity of building community and the truth that our differences, the things that make us unique, are the very things that make us awesome. Hello, Ryan. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great.
Hey, thanks for
We
being
Good
are
to see you
here.
guys.
so glad that you
I'm super excited.
could join us. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Where to begin? I do enough interviews. I've been interviewed. I always hate, but you have to start with the obvious things. So I'm sure you've been asked this 7 bajillion times. Tell us about the book. Where did it come from? Why did you write it?
Yeah, your whole movement, right?
Tell us where it started, because it is awesome, and
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's people that are new, and that's we want to
Yeah,
be able to shine that light on you.
for sure. No, that's great. Yeah, I've only been asked that question like maybe 3 times. Well,
Yeah,
we'll go.
I'm sure.
Before I say that, I just want to say real quick, I watched last week, and I right now
Pop.
am firmly in the soda camp. I know,
Oh
sorry,
yes,
No,
Team
but here's the
Jason.
thing.
no.
There's more to it though,
Gross.
because I grew up in a pop house. I
Oh,
grew up here in the Midwest. We called it pop all the time. That's all. That's how I knew it. So
okay.
I can't even remember when it changed to soda. I can't remember.
You're so
I
smart.
feel like it must have been when I got more money, right? I feel like that.
When you got
More
more
money?
then,
Is
pop.
that just...
then I got fancy, and then I started with soda. But
That's what
and I
I'm
do
talking
remember
about.
going to Texas once to visit family, and you're right.
Yeah.
They called everything Coke, and I was so confused. I
Right.
was like, I don't want Coke, but I call everything. So anyway,
Yeah.
For those
um,
of you who
but
didn't see
yes,
last week's show and they're like, what? We had a huge debate. Team Kim versus Team Jason on soda versus pop. Obviously, pop, soda. So anyway, let's
I'm
just
glad
change
you
the
brought that up,
subject.
Ryan.
Let's change the subject quickly.
I figured you might. Uh, so yes, the quick story is, so if you can't see, so here's my left arm. This is where my hand would be. It's not there.
Mhm.
I was born
Do
that way.
that.
I know, it's like it's a magic trick. Uh, but it was a surprise to everyone. The doctors, my parents, nobody knew I was going to be born with one hand, and so they kind of freaked out a little bit right away. But then the doctors let me go home, and everything from then on was just kind of normal. At least that's the way I kind of went through life. I think my parents, my relatives, my friends, my teachers, everyone kind of treated me just like anyone else.
Mhm.
And so for me, having one hand didn't bother me that much. I was just a kid who loved sports. I played everything, very active. Um, Anything any other kid could do, I could do. I just figured out a way to do it. And that's, the book that you have there. It talks a lot about that.
Mhm.
But then flash forward till I was in my early 30s. I was actually having dinner at Culver's by my house, and I saw this woman walk in with her son who had an arm like mine, and it was kind of the first time I had seen someone like me in my own community. It wasn't something I paid attention to normally. I didn't like look around scanning the room for people with one hand. I didn't really care about that. But noticing him so close to where I lived was a big deal, and we kind of made eye contact and whatever. And then as I was leaving, the mom essentially like grabbed him and ran after me and just kind of presented us to each other. And it was just, you could tell it was a big deal for her to see someone like her son, who I'm sure she probably hadn't seen before. At least not in her own community, her own neighborhood. And so it was really kind of at that moment where I was like, if I can provide that much relief and inspiration, like to her, just by eating by myself. Like, I think maybe I could do something more intentional. And so I started at that point trying to think about, like, what is it that I could do? How can I use my voice to help? Because I really didn't know. Like I said, my life up to that point, I felt like was pretty normal. I wasn't picked on. I wasn't bullied. I didn't struggle with things. I wasn't embarrassed. And so I was like, what are these things that people struggle with? So I had to find that out first, and then made a website called livingonehanded.com, and started writing about what's it like to live as a person with a physical difference. I remember one of the first things I wrote was how do I deal with being stared at? And it just really connected with people. And that was the thing I heard a lot from parents was, my kid doesn't seem to care, but it drives me nuts, you know? And it was like, how do I deal with that? And so I was just able to share my experience, and I'm just one person. It's just my experience. Other people deal with it differently, but it just was a good way for me to kind of get that out. And then, I made videos about how I do things with one hand, and they're all kind of funny, and just to make people laugh, but also especially to help parents who have kids who have one hand, just to say, hey, look, it's possible. Like, your kid will figure it out. Don't worry. And then the book, which I have a copy here as well, kind of came from it's actually a true story. For those of you who are unfamiliar, one of my younger brothers, my brother Joey, one year in elementary school, his teacher told him to bring something cool for show and tell. And so he brought me. He's like, this is my brother. He has one hand. What do you got? The kids ask me questions.
Drop, right?
Right, exactly.
Best show and tell ever.
So that's the story, kind of.
Yeah, nice Star Wars.
So it retells that story.
Yeah.
So it retells that story. And as you go along, you realize that each of his classmates who are asking his brother questions, that there's something different about them as well. And so by the end of it, you realize that we're all different in some way or another. And that's something to celebrate. That's something that is awesome. And it isn't something to be afraid of. It isn't something to kind of hold at bay or to exclude people. But it's something to embrace, like I said. And so it's been awesome to see it connect. It came out actually 5 years ago in July. It'll be 5 years. It's on its fourth printing. There are like 10,000 copies out in the world. And I get to travel to schools and, like I said, hospitals and businesses and stuff like that, to kind of share that message. And it's been amazing. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the kids and like what I've learned from my experience going to elementary schools and doing these assemblies. But even more so for me, not more rewarding, but rewarding in a different way, is when I talk to adults, because we need to hear this too. And I'm finding that more and more, that we don't think we're awesome and we don't think our differences are awesome. And so to see adults kind of admit that, maybe, and say, yeah, I don't like, I mean, I've had grown men and women come and cry on my shoulder after giving a presentation. Wow. Because of things you wouldn't guess, because of things like wearing glasses. Like, I've been so embarrassed that I have to wear glasses that they're crying about it.
Wow.
And they say, wow, you've helped me to see that isn't a bad thing and that it's okay. And like, it blows me away every time that happens. But it's just something that I've seen over and over, that we like to think we have it together as adults, and that, yeah, of course, different is awesome. But deep down, I think most of us struggle. If there's something different about us, it hangs on, man. And so it's been a joy to be able to kind of speak to that. So
that's cool. Yeah, I like that you brought that up, because you're like, oh yeah, different is awesome and all that, but it's like, but my different is bad.
Right.
Like, that's like not my different, not my brand, right? So that's cool. And I would love to hear what you have learned, particularly from the kids, from the students. I know, and I think we'll talk more about the adults later after that too, because I think that's cool angle. But man, I feel like you watch the news, you just see what's going on, and you're like, man, can we just get some kids to like tell us how to act, because we're not doing a very good job. And I just it would be kind of neat to hear what are some of the things that you've noticed about kids, things they've taught you, or how they react to differences, both when they see you or what you've seen them react to other people who are different and what they're telling you.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And like, I love, like, it's one of those things where most people, I think, don't understand why I enjoy going and standing in front of like 300 third graders. Like,
that's torture for
crazy.
some.
Right. Oh my God.
Here that you love that. I remember standing behind this crowd. It was like 500 kids. And a friend of mine was a teacher at the school. And she was like, aren't you like super nervous? And I was like, I probably should be, right? Like, but it's one of those things where like, that's my home. Like, I feel so at home in front of them because I feel like I get them. And so some of the things that you said, that the thing you started with about our brains and how they work is so true. And it's so interesting to see it developing in kids, because they have not had the amount of life that we have to have those things ingrained in us. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm 40, I think I'm 42. I think that's right. That's sad. I can't remember.
That, yeah.
But I've had 42 years of believing certain things, right? And so, like you said, when I'm confronted with something that's different than that, it's incredibly challenging to change that. Mm-hmm. Whereas for a first grader, they don't have that amount of time that they're changing things. And so one of the things that I love about going and just getting in front of them, like at a school, is just that, being in front of them and having them see someone who they haven't seen before, right? Most of these kids probably haven't seen someone with one hand. And so they have these preconceived notions about what I'll be like or what I can do, or that they should be sad for me, or, so many kids, like their first reaction is surprise, like, whoa. But then also I hear so many kids go, oh, because they're sad. Like, oh, he's broken. Mm. Like, that's what they're thinking. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have two hands like everybody else. That's so sad for him. And so I get to go and show them how I swing a bat, how I play catch, how I catch a football, how I play basketball, how I jump rope, like, and tell them these stories and show them these things. And they're immediately like, wait, oh, okay. No, so he can do like all the stuff that I can do. He just does it differently, And so I very specifically challenge them to address that, to say, sometimes when we see someone come in the room and let's say they're in a wheelchair or they're blind and they have to use a seeing stick or something, like, our initial thought might be to feel bad or to think, oh, they probably can't do the same things that I can do. And I challenge them to say, well, you've seen me do all this stuff. And so let's try to think differently. Mm-hmm. Let's say there's someone just like me. They happen to be in a wheelchair, but I'm curious about how they do certain things, right? Like, that must be pretty cool. And so trying to like rewire those things to say that different isn't sad, different isn't scary. Mm-hmm. It's just different. And in fact can be awesome. I have this friend, Josh, who he's missing both arms and both legs. And I was hanging out with him once when I was at this conference in Boston. And also, I just want to acknowledge the fact I realize I have one hand and I speak with my hands more than most people. I get it. So whenever I do speaking things, I'm like, sorry, I can't do a handheld mic. You gotta tell. Like, let's just get this out. But I remember I was following him around this one day just because I wanted to see how he did things. And he was like, at one point he realized, he was like, are you just following me around? And I was like, yes. It's amazing. I love watching you do stuff. And he was just like, that's annoying, but also kind of funny. And so yeah, those are, the things with kids. It's just so great to see, kind of to be, for me to be able to help lay that foundation and help them, because at this point it's still formulating, right? Like they're still figuring stuff out. So it's not even that they're necessarily changing what they believe at this point. They're still forming that. And so that I get to come in and help them, to lay that foundation of saying that different is not only okay, different is awesome, is just really rewarding for me. And I get messages of just my friend Anthony actually the other day sent me a text and said, he has 2 daughters, and his younger daughter noticed this guy who had one leg and said, "Daddy, that guy has one leg." And her older sister said, "Yeah, isn't that awesome? Just like Uncle Ryan says, different is awesome." And so like it's in there somewhere. Like they're applying it to actual life, which is super cool. So yeah, I love that part of what I get to do. And I had this one other kid. One of my favorite responses ever was, they also have very interesting questions, kids do, because they know they want to ask something, but they're not sure what to ask. They're like, I know something is not right here, but I don't know what to ask to correct it. So he came up and he just had this puzzled look on his face, and he goes, "How do you eat?" And I said, "Well, I just use this hand. Like I use my fork and my spoon. I use this hand." And he just looked at me and just went, "Huh, you want to go play?" Like that was it. So, like all mysteries have been dispelled.
I wish all
by
of
letting
the
him
questions
know
of the universe could be that straightforward.
I can eat.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yep.
That's good.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about, like, I know when we talked before, we're friends, we've talked about things. I know Kim was talking to you the other day, and one of the things that she said you talked about that I thought would be neat to bring up is the idea that parents, like when I talked earlier in the monologue about leaving room for edits, leaving room in the margins, and the sense that sometimes parents who have a child who is born differently in one way or the other, that they maybe need to adjust their story that they have of their child or what their child can expect, and that you provide inspiration for that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Before you answer, if anyone has any questions for Ryan, he'll be with us for a few more minutes, so feel free. There's a little delay, so we'll make sure those questions come in a little bit too, because some of the comments here are tying into that already. So,
Nice. Yeah, no, that's great. I love questions, so throw them at me. Yeah, I think parents. I mean, listen, parenting advice is like nearly impossible for anybody, right? Everyone has a different philosophy and method of parenting and all that kind of stuff. So then add in a kid who has a physical difference, and it becomes even more complex. And so I think that my main thing, like what I tell parents, is I feel like the more that you treat them like anybody else, the more you're setting them up for success. While not what's the word I'm looking for? Not neglecting the fact that they are different, because they are. Like, so just ignoring the fact that I have one hand is also not helpful.
Right.
So acknowledging it, but then embracing it and just saying, "Hey, well, what are the things that you want to do? All right, figure out a way to do that." And I think that kids follow their parents' lead, right? I think we all kind of know that. And so, the example of a kid falling down and scraping their knee, and you see that look on their face, they're about to cry. And you, as a parent, if you freak out, they're going to freak out. If you are like, "Hey, that was awesome," they're confused. They'll generally be like, "Oh, okay, all right, well, whatever." But the same, when we do that with our kids. And so it's like, if I'm constantly creating this narrative for my child that they are different and it's bad, and that everyone needs to cater to them, and that they should expect something different than other people, I feel like we're doing a disservice to them. And so as parents, when we have that situation, how, if we have other kids, how do we treat our other kids? Just how do we parent in general? And I get it that it's different. I remember my dad said that his initial reaction was not good because very active. He was a strong, athletic, active. That's who he was. And I think his initial thought was like, how is he going to do anything? Which is common. I get those emails probably every week. I get emails from parents who say, we were so worried and sad because we were like, well, how are they going to do anything? And then found your page and we watched your videos. And now we're like, oh, he'll be fine.
You know? How will he eat?
That's my whole goal. Yeah, even my dad said that his mom, my grandma, he said she took you away from me and made me go take a walk. And then when I came back, she said, Calvin, relax. He's going to be great. Everything's going to be fine. Settle down. And I appreciate that she did that for him. But it is one of those things where I always say to acknowledge and embrace the difference because it's real, and there will be real challenges that come with it, but also not making it a negative thing. So I even know that in my own life. I mean, I've done this now for 42 years, and I still have instances where I'm self-conscious, or I'll drop something at the store and I'll immediately think, oh no, all these people think I'm incompetent and that I can't carry things because I only have one hand. When in reality, none of them care, right? Nobody's looking at me or thinking that, but it gets in my head. So trying to even get those things out of my own head, and it's not all the time, of course, but from time to time it'll creep in. So I think parenting. I have 3 kids of my own, a junior, a sophomore, and an 8th grader. And so I know that parenting is really hard. But I think it's, if we do our best and we stick to what our philosophy of parenting is, you can't go wrong. And if you make a mistake, you apologize and you move forward.
That's great. So. Well, we do have a very important question.
I know it.
Suzanne.
Be prepared for this.
She wants to know why you're wearing a Brewers hat. Go Cubs, go! Inquiring minds, Ryan. I don't know.
Sorry.
So here's the deal. I'm wearing a Brewers hat because I am a Brewers fan, but I did wear his shirt.
I know, right?
It works out.
It all works
out.
And I also said soda. So
that's true.
I feel like 2 out of 3.
Come on.
I had to bring that up because we do live in Wisconsin, and I'm not usually a lot of Cub fans, so any chance I get,
that's true.
You could tell we do a lot of speaking in Illinois because we do have Illinois friends.
Yeah. We'll probably start a civil war in the comments now between Brewers and Cardinals and White Sox.
And I will
say, there's no baseball being played right now, people.
That's why it's all pent up. It's all.
I will say this hat. I think I have worn this hat literally every day of quarantine. So probably since March 11th, I bet I've worn this hat literally every single day.
Is there like a hopeful, baseball will still be played kind of thing going?
No, I just don't want to deal with my hair. I don't want to deal with combing my hair. I actually got it cut the other day for the first time, and I bought more product, and I was like, I don't even remember how to use this. I literally think I've used it once in 3 months.
Well, just to have equal time here, we've got Mike has got to go Brewers.
There you go. Yeah.
And Angela. Go Cardinals.
Angela. Cardinals. We can all agree and disagree on that.
Let's team up, Ryan. We're both against that, right? That's all right.
Oh, we love you, Angela.
Well, okay. Last real thing. We definitely want people to go to livingonehanded.com. I assume was that where you've been doing more recent videos in the pandemic,
Facebook?
Or is that on Facebook or Instagram where you're showing how do you float? How do you do a kayak? How do you how do people find out?
So I would say probably the thing that is updated the most would be, so I'm at Living One Handed on Instagram, and then facebook.com/Living One Handed. Those are probably the 2 places that I update the most. I do have this is way out there, but I am on TikTok as well. All my kids are on TikTok, and I was like, I'm crashing your party. But I do have one on there it's at Healthy One-Handed. And it's been like my health journey over the last, we're on day 73 now of that. So I do like a 1-minute thing every day where I just kind of give an update on how things are going. And that's been super helpful for me. So if you're maybe in the same boat and need some encouragement or something, check that out. But yeah, the living one-handed stuff for sure would be Facebook and Instagram would be the main places that I update the most.
Cool. Well, we just love you, Ryan, and your enthusiasm and passion for your work. It shines. And that's what I've been seeing in the comments as I've been peeking over there of like, thank you for doing what you do. And I know a couple of teachers are on, so they're like excited.
Special ed teachers and
excited for this new take to be able to bring into their classrooms. So
yeah, I mean, the only other thing I was going to say is that, I do the speaking stuff. If people are interested, let me know. We can figure something out. But kind of the overarching theme for me lately, I was like, what is my core thing? Like, what am I trying to say to people? What different is awesome, and that whole thing. And it really comes down to like, you matter. Like, I feel like people need to know that they matter. And I feel like a lot of people right now feel like they don't matter. And so that really for me is just the biggest thing. Like it doesn't take much to let someone know that they matter to you. So whatever that means for you, whether it's writing a card, I've been sending out like postcards that have living one-handed stuff on it to just friends of mine to tell them that I appreciate them, a phone call, a text, whatever. Just let people know that they matter. I just think it's such a huge thing, especially right now. People want to know that. We all want to feel like we matter. And it's pretty easy to let people know that they do. So that's where I'm at right now.
Very cool. I can get behind that for sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. This has been a blast. People are saying how glad that you're here and what you're doing. So keep up the good work. Angela says you matter. So that's awesome.
And she was the one that Cardinal fan.
Yeah. So redeeming quality,
her resiliency.
Terrible. Really? Okay.
I kid because I love. All right, Ryan. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Keep up the great work. Okay, buddy.
Yes. Yep. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
See you soon. Awesome, right? Oh my gosh, that was dense with awesomeness.
Yes, you know what? Something he said about at the end there about you matter. I mean, it reminds me of I don't know if it was last week or the week before talking about hurt people. If you remember talking about that, and that's part of where that comes from. Is like people don't feel like they matter. They feel like they're ignored. They feel like whatever, and it might just be the neighbor next door that like you don't realize how lonely they are, or
especially right now.
Yeah, so there's.
Well, Jason, you wrote a really powerful post about the Joker movie. I don't know when that came out. Was it winter of 2019? Like before the holidays. Yeah. And so if you've missed that, just go to escapeadulthood.com and put in the search box like the Joker. It was super powerful, and it was really that concept of like when people don't feel like they're seen, that they don't matter, there are some consequences.
Bad things can happen. Right. So, but the cool thing is we all can do that. We can all look at who's in our circle, who's around us, maybe someone we haven't never talked to, but just notice something good and tell them. I think that's one of the things I tell teachers all the time when I speak at schools is like the people who had the biggest impact in my life were teachers who noticed things about me, whether it was my art or creative writing or something like that. And they told me. And that's the thing is like we downplay our strengths because our strengths are usually we can do it well and we can do it easy. And so we think it's not special. So when people call out the things that you would think are obviously talents and they know they're talents, but they don't. Yeah. Like we need people to notice good things and tell us. And that really has an impact more than we know. So